In 1513, the Spanish conquistador Vasco Nunez de Balboa first crossed the Isthmus of Panama. When the narrow nature of the isthmus became generally known, European powers noticed the possibility to dig a water passage between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Welcome to Survivor Analytics, the finale of Survivor Panama / Exile Island, where we're covering the last 2 episodes. I'm the voice of the people. My name's Jack. With me, as always, for the end of our 9th season. Is that right?
Yeah.
The true expert. Say hi, Clyde.
What's up, party people? Jack said it. 9 seasons in the books. We've had 5 new era seasons and 4 old school seasons. And for me, at least, these old school ones stand out a lot more in my mind.
Yeah.
And the fact that we talk about the canal and we actually get to see it in this episode is really exciting.
Yeah. Clyde, impressions. So we are combining the penultimate episode and the finale. What was your, I mean, you've seen these before, but what was your impression of the 2 on this watch? How did you feel about the end of Panama at a vibe level?
So I'll say that those 2 episodes fit well together as just one cohesive finale. It's kind of whack to me that back in 2006, they made all the fans wait a full week in between the 2.
I have a theory on that.
Oh, okay. Wait, what's the theory?
So, I mean, we'll get to this in a bit, but Suri goes home at fire. Suri is so beloved, by far the most beloved person on this cast, that production knew that if they showed her being eliminated before the finale, it would cause a drop in viewing ratings for the finale.
Oh, okay. That's I like that theory, actually.
A little tinfoil hat
to it,
but there's something to it.
It's not insane. I will say, in terms of overall vibes on the finale, one thing that I love about Panama at large is that I think it has one of the more shocking finales in the history of the show. Obviously, I didn't watch this back in 2006. I was busy being, 7 years old or whatever. But if I were to do a player ranking going into that 14th episode of the season, I would say that the 2 contestants most likely to win this are Terry and Suri. And neither of them even make it to the final tribal. You end up with this weird final tribal council of Danielle and Aris, and I really don't have a strong opinion either way on who would deserve to win the season. So I like it when a season ends like this where there's a good argument for either person winning the whole thing.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I found the final tribal council, I actually liked the questions from the jury more than I usually do. Usually I'm not very high on them. I have a few to hit on there. But yeah, Suri and Terry, clearly the main characters of the season in terms of win equity. And like this, I think, is a season. When did they switch to the 3-person final tribal?
The season immediately after this, Cook Islands.
I mean, I don't know the production schedule there. This seems like a compelling argument, right, to expand the final tribal. Because losing both of them ahead of the last half an hour of the finale, I did not care that much about.
Really? Okay.
I mean, because I was curious to see who was going to win and how the arguments would go, but like from a from a Survivor podcaster perspective, right? I was like, oh, let's see who does so we can discuss it. As a fan and as a viewer, I lost all emotional connection. I was like, I didn't care anymore because the 2 people I was invested in were gone.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Should we jump in? We've got a lot to cover here.
Yeah, we got a lot to go through. Where do you want to start?
All right, so let's start with Terry's heel turn. Because this came out of nowhere. After Tribal, they come back to camp. Suri basically drops her torch. Not a big deal. And Terry blows up at her for no reason. It was a very strange interaction. It's a late night fight. I don't know. It was just messy. It was gross.
Yeah, it's another instance of Terry just having a poor social game. We know that Terry is a bad strategic player. He's failed to flip the game in his favor for the entire post-merge. But this was an instance where we saw Terry enter an argument with someone other than Aris. Before this episode, you could make the case that Terry has a feud with Aris, but outside that, people seem to gel with him. Now it feels like that position on the bottom, that feeling of being excluded and scraping by round to round is finally getting to Terry, and he lets go onto Suri. He says that he needs to monitor over the camp like he's watching over his kids, which is disrespectful to Suri. One, because she's a mom herself, and two, because she's not a kid. She was on the older woman's tribe at the very beginning of the game. So
yeah,
it seems like Terry wasn't paying attention a lot to the original tribal dynamics.
Yeah, Jeff does point out that this Final Four has somebody from each of the smaller tribes, right?
Yeah.
They do something Cook Islands could not, which is have every group be represented in the Final Four.
I'm trying to think. I think every group was represented on Cook Islands except the white people.
I'm trying to think who the Final Four was now.
Yeah, you had Ozzy
Yule,
from the Hispanic tribe, Yule and Becky
Ozzy
from the Asian Americans, and Sundra from the African American tribe.
I completely forgot about Sundra. To be honest, I thought Parvati was at the end.
No, she didn't even make it to Final 5. She went out at Final 6. Yeah.
Oops.
That's a story for a different season, though.
Anyway.
Listen to the podcast from a year ago for our thoughts on that.
Anyways, so this moment was just, it was kind of a heel turn where I went, oh, maybe I don't like Terry anymore because this sucks. Like, it's just a disappointing kind of low point for his character. Should we knock out this first reward challenge? We've got a lot to get through here.
Yeah, we can speed through this reward challenge. What are the things that you want to highlight from it?
All right. The reward is 2 people will get to tour the Panama Canal on a yacht with a 5-course meal and an open bar and exile somebody. And it's actually exiling everyone who doesn't go on the reward. So the challenge itself's not very interesting. It's running through some stations with a rope, counting some stuff, and unlocking locks. Importantly, though, Aris wins. And there's a weird little moment, our second of the episode, where Terry's just kind of crummy. He's not exactly a sore loser. He's being very litigious about the rules. It feels like the guy who loses Catan and then starts like counting roads to make sure he didn't get longest road. You know, like there's just a little pettiness. So that's all I really have to highlight. Aris wins, taking Suri with him to reward, exiles Terry and Danielle.
Well, I think it's important to mention that Aris is not the most gracious winner either.
No.
He says to Terry, "What are you going to do, Terry? Say something bad about women?" Which is such an offhanded insult from Aris.
Yeah.
It felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. Terry hasn't said anything this season that's been degrading to women, especially when you consider the fact that Shane is on the cast. Well, Shane is the one that's been saying horrible things this entire season.
So yes and no. Shane is the horrible one. Terry was just very rude to Suri, but it's not really relevant. Aris also says, "Oh, are you going to complain every time you lose?" This is the first time that Terry has lost anything, like, in forever. Like, Aris is trying to, like, start records here and start patterns with one data point, which doesn't work. They have a messy relationship, right? Their whole thing is their rivalry, and they're just going to commit to that until the end. So
it wasn't until this episode that this small detail kind of came to the surface for me. Aris and Terry are wearing similar baseball shirts, but inverted colors. Aris has a red one with white sleeves. I think Terry has a red one with black sleeves. So maybe that was fate. Maybe that was some action by production to set up the rivalry
symbolism
a little bit more. So
Yeah.
that was a fun little moment for me. Last thing I'll throw out with this challenge is that I think the person who wins the challenge should only send one person to exile. I think the whole purpose of Exile Island is that you're isolated from the rest of the cast. You don't have that opportunity to scheme with other people. Aris ends up sending Danielle and Terry to exile, which ends up serving as this springboard for them to come together and make an alliance.
Yeah, it really fully locks in that this is going to be a 2-2 split, right? Based on these dynamics. I also wrote down this is a waste of iguanas and crabs because there was no need to have live iguanas in a cage for this challenge. Yeah, it does set up a weird thing. So should we go to exile?
Yeah, let's hit on exile quick.
They basically say, hey, they make a pact. If one of us wins the next challenge, we will take the other to final 3. And they start to have conversation around essentially Terry sharing the idol. He shows it fully, gets it out. We have some interesting questions around that will come up in a bit. But that's pretty much all they decide to say, hey, If one of us wins, we're both going.
And I think you need to credit Danielle here. I feel like she's one of the more flexible, strategic players on the cast. She knows Aris and Cirie are a tight-knit pair. She needs to find another option, and Terry's the only other person that could potentially work with her. And by forming this alliance, I think it benefits Danielle way more than Terry. If he wins immunity at Final Four, he told Danielle he'll give her the idol. So it's a free round of immunity for Danielle at Final Four if Terry wins it. Whereas if he doesn't, he just keeps the idol for himself. What is like Terry getting from Danielle? I feel like Danielle is getting a lot more from Terry, and we see that later on when she ends up flipping on him at the Final Three.
I think he's trying to get a stronger relationship for Final Three, right? He's trying to get somebody who can give him anything strategic, right? His entire resume is challenges. He has nothing else. Yeah, he's not really getting anything back. He's not classic Terry problem. There's no strategy. I don't think he's looking to get something back because I don't think he's thinking more than one step ahead.
I also feel that Terry kind of projects his own philosophy of the game on other people, where Terry to his core is a super loyal guy. He says later in the episode that if he won that Final Three immunity challenge, he was going to take Danielle to the end. And he just assumes that other people would reciprocate for him, and that just wasn't the case. It's weird, too, because looking back, I think this Final Two deal between Terry and Danielle ends up being Terry's downfall. He thinks that Danielle is someone that has no chance at winning the Final Three challenge. But by pure luck, that challenge favors lighter weight contestants.
Yeah.
So he probably would have been better off keeping Cirie and Aris going into that round.
So speaking of Cirie and Aris, do you want to talk about reward? I really don't have much to talk about here, except that somewhere on the yacht, Aris has found his hair gel and redone his spiky swoop hair that makes him look like Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's cartoon hair. He has it for the rest of the episode until he falls in the water at the challenge.
Aris is rocking the spiky hair. We get a travel commercial montage of Aris explaining the location of the canal and the function of the locks. It's a little bit similar to the opening of Survivor China, where you get the historical significance of the country. Other thing I'll mention from this section of the episode is that Aris and Cirie officially lock in their Final Two agreement. Up until this point, there's been a suspicion that Cirie wants to go to the end with Aris, but this is the moment where they say, I'm with you, we're going to stick together till the very end. And knowing what we know now about Aris beating Danielle in the final tribal council, I gotta say that I think Aris was probably the second biggest jury threat of the season. If he ends up getting his wish and he goes to the end with Cirie, I could see a world where he straight up beats Cirie in a jury vote. For Aris, I think he gets Terry, Austin, and Bruce. Cirie gets Courtney, Danielle, and Sally. And the winning vote of the season is Shane. So who knows what happens with that Shane vote? It comes down to who picks the better number between 1 and a million.
I think Shane goes to Cirie there.
I struggle to predict anything that Shane can do on this season.
That's true. That's true.
At the very least, it's tight. So even though Cirie plays a great strategic game, I'll be talking more about her strategic game when we get to her elimination. I do think you need to fault her social play a bit on this season. It seems like people want to work with her on the island, but that doesn't always translate to jury votes. And I don't know if Cirie fully had the respect of the jury in the same way that Aris did.
Yeah, let's keep that in mind as we get a little further in here. Do you want to cover the immunity challenge?
Yeah, I got two notes from the immunity challenge.
Let's hear your two.
Super quick. The logistics. They're collecting puzzle pieces through reading a set of coordinates, and the first person to complete all three puzzles gets immunity. The winner of it is Aris. That's all I had.
Only to add a couple little things. It feels like a new era challenge. Digging up some sand and doing a puzzle. But I like the coordinate thing. It adds a memory component. Every set of puzzle pieces reveals the coordinates for the next set. I liked that. Aris wins. Terry gets close, but he chokes a little bit.
Quick statistic with Terry. I don't have the exact numbers, so I shouldn't say quick statistic. But general challenge take when it comes to Terry. Prior to the family visit, Terry wins nearly every reward challenge and every immunity challenge of the season. After the family visit, Terry goes 1 for 4. He wins immunity and then loses 2 immunities and a reward afterwards. So, I do think there's an argument there that Terry
left
lost
it all
some
on the
steam. He lost some energy at the fantasy suite date, and that affected his performance for the rest of the season.
He was a little depleted, one might say. After the challenge, Terry gets an apology from Aris for his comments about Terry's potential for disparaging women. You know it's a Survivor argument when you're getting an apology for an insult about a hypothetical. Like,
yeah,
there's like 3 levels to it, and we never see anybody demand an apology for, threatening to drive somewhere and murder somebody. But when someone says, "Oh, are you going to disparage women?" Terry's like, "I can't have that. I wouldn't speak like that to a flight attendant. I need an apology from you." Oh, this is worth mentioning because we didn't earlier. When Aris and Cirie came back from exile, Cirie lit a fire for the first time by herself. So
yes.
We had some foreshadowing for this pre-tribal sequence where it's pretty transparently Danielle versus Cirie in fire. They're expecting it to be fire. They're both practicing, being coached by their respective men. Let me ask you this. Terry has no strategic acumen. We've proven that over and over. Is there a world where he plays the idol for Danielle, gives it to her, and this all doesn't happen? Cirie goes home, and all of a sudden Danielle's indebted to him, and it's a final, like, the final 3 is way more interesting. Like, is there a world where he actually does that, or does she flip on him as soon as he gives it to her, right?
I think the rules of the idol make this a lot more interesting, because if this is new era Survivor, Terry could play that idol for Danielle after the votes are cast. But since this is old school Survivor, you can't pass that idol back and forth after the casting of the votes themselves. Meaning Terry would need to give it to Danielle before Tribal Council and just hope that she doesn't run to Cirie and Aris and say, "I got the idol, now we can knock out Terry." It's an interesting idea. It's something that we saw in Cook Islands as well, because Yul had the idol at Final 4. He could have passed it to Becky to prevent her from going into fire making, but he chose to hold on to it. I liked it when Yul made that decision to play a bit selfishly, and I got to carry that same philosophy to Terry. Like, Terry has been so selfish with that idol all season. He had so many opportunities to flip the game in favor of his Lamina tribe, and he didn't do it because he just wanted safety for himself. If he went, 5 rounds without giving that idol to anyone, and then at the last moment passed it to Danielle, I don't see that working out well for him. Yeah. We also got to keep in mind that Terry was probably looking at the end game and thinking, with this idol, I am just 1 immunity challenge away from winning the season. Why risk that on someone like Danielle, who has flipped on him in the past? At the final 6, Danielle told him and Courtney that she would vote against Aris, and she did do that. She was a part of that 3-2-1 vote that took out Courtney.
Right.
So Danielle hasn't proven herself to Terry, so I like his decision to hold on to it here. If he was going to pass it to someone, he should have done it a month ago.
So we go to Tribal. Shane looks insane. I sent you a picture earlier. I was watching on my computer. Obviously, Paramount has like screenshot protection. So it took me a while to figure out I had to take a picture with my phone. Let me just zoom in. He's doing Zen hands. He seems to be wearing basically a blazer with no shirt underneath. He's got a beanie. He walks in wearing a beanie. He takes it off. It's on his lap. Full pot belly. It's taken him 3 days off the island to gorge himself. And belly is fully out. We'll see if that shows up on YouTube. So Shane looks insane. The big question is, does Terry have it or not? Everybody except Aris gets to give a little, hey, if this is my last night, here's what I learned. Here's Survivor. Cirie gives a great speech. right? She talks about how she's lived on the couch for 35 years and now she's gotten up off the couch. Really great, moving. Both Courtney and Shane roll their eyes at whatever Danielle says. I didn't even write it down, but I didn't realize how much Courtney hates Danielle. The entire vote, Courtney is visibly cheering whenever Danielle gets voted for.
I was under the assumption that Courtney was one of Danielle's closest allies, which it's weird that Courtney has so much animosity towards Danielle because that animosity really should go towards Cirie. It was Cirie's idea to take Courtney out of the game. Maybe because that connection to Danielle was so tight, Courtney puts more of the blame on her.
Yeah, I wonder what has been said in Ponderosa to make it so. So it's a 2-2 vote. And this I mentioned it earlier, Survivor has the audacity to say, tune in next time to see what happens. Oh my God. I was so, like, I knew I had to watch 2 episodes. I was so pissed about this. And it's got to be because of Cirie. I absolutely think it's because it was Cirie. If it had been Aris and Danielle, we would have seen it this week. Now we're in the finale. We're not doing winners and losers, right? There's no point.
Nah. No winners and losers in the last episode of a season. We have a clear winner here. So
we come to the finale. How long do you think the recap is?
Man, I skipped it. Was it like 10 minutes? Because I think they recap the entire season, right?
They recap the entire season. It's 11 minutes long.
Ooh, I was close.
It's an hour and 34-minute episode, which means it was a 2-hour, at least, maybe 2.5 hour finale on live TV. Probably 2.5 hours. And 11 minutes are given to the recap. Then we get to fire making, and it is over pretty quick. Cirie loses.
Yeah, it's way quicker than the fire making challenge we saw in Cook Islands, where Becky and Sundra are, I think they're given matches to get through that one.
Yeah.
But Cirie loses this.
Man.
It's absolutely devastating. I can tell you that Cirie is currently competing on the latest season of Australian Survivor, which is Survivor Australia versus the world. And they had a weird gimmick this past week where both tribes went to tribal council. Each one had a member randomly selected for a fire-making challenge, and the loser would have their group officially attend tribal, and the other group would be safe. So it's a really weird gimmick that I'm not a huge fan of. But the reason why I bring it up is because Cirie is the person who was randomly chosen for the fire-making challenge on her side, and she lost it.
No.
20 years later, Jack. She still doesn't know how to make a fire. I was so upset. So I bring that up because I essentially saw Cirie lose fire making twice
this week
in a single week, which was a major bummer. So Cirie is taken out of the game here. I mentioned that she comes back on season 16 Survivor Micronesia. So we'll see her in around 2 years when we cover that season in the summer of 2027.
And we'll see her in another 3 weeks because she's on 50.
Well, that'll be in the spring. So we'll see her in March and then also 2027. We'll get plenty more Cirie on the podcast.
I forgot I have to make it through 49 before I get to 50. But it's got to be tough to be in the season where all of the hype is for the next season, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a shame. But I'm really sad to see Cirie go. I mean, she's dominated the season. I texted you ahead of time in case you have any information about this. At the finale, at the live vote read, Jeff says, you'll hear from our winner and from the most popular survivor of the season, Cirie. Like, there's clearly a massive fan. I mean, she's a huge fan favorite, right?
Yeah.
What did that look like in the time, right? What is this Cirie lore? Why was she so popular? You know, I mean, she's really charming, right? She's clearly made the best relationships on the beach. Is there anything you can tell me about why she became such a big name?
So I think it's a combination of two factors. One is the strategic game. I think Cirie plays one of the best non-winning games in the entire history of the show here. She had the superfan audience entertained because she was directing votes left and right, but she also captured the hearts of the casual audience. And I think she did that through the storyline of being the fan that got off the couch. if you're someone that tunes into Survivor once a week, you're probably more likely to resonate with a character like Suri than someone
Mhm.
like a Terry or an Aris. Suri's a fan. Suri's someone that was watching the show. She's not the strongest physically. She's not, this off the wall personality like a Shane. She's kind of an everyday person that just has such a natural knack for the game and a natural charisma to her. And I think that drew
Yeah.
people towards Suri. This
Yeah.
season had the Sprint Fan Favorite Award that went to Suri, and she won a GMC Yukon, which I think was the same car that Terry won, right?
That is the same car Terry won.
We talked about Sprint in the past. I think they had some reward
They
on
had the phone
Samoa.
where
Yeah.
they were like filming out the window of the plane with the phone. I remember that really clearly. It was
Yeah.
okay. What happened to Sprint? Oh, it's just T-Mobile. I think T-Mobile owns Sprint. Anyway, sorry to see Suri go. Moving on.
Well, can I talk about Suri a bit more? This is my last chance to hype her up
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah. Hype her up. Keep it going.
Would you agree with me that Suri's the best player on the cast, even though she didn't win?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's even close between Suri and second place?
No, because second place is Terry for raw physical prowess.
Okay. I wouldn't even say Terry at number 2.
Who would
I
you
think
put at
it's a
number
huge-
2?
It's a toss-up between Danielle and Aris. I think I would lean Aris, but I don't hate the argument for Danielle. I wouldn't put Terry in the top 3. I think Terry is so atrocious in the other facets of the game that I can't put him as a top player here. But when it comes to Suri, I mentioned it earlier, this is one of the best non-winning games in the history of the show. And when I'm evaluating Survivor players and I'm building my top 50 contestants in the history of the franchise, one of the biggest things that I'm looking for is, can you play from the top and the bottom? Survivor is an unpredictable game. You're not always going to be in a position of power. Sometimes you'll be on a tribe with people who you don't connect with. Sometimes you'll get swapped over to a tribe and you'll need to dig yourself out from a bottom feeder position. Suri proves that ability to work from both the top and the bottom in just one appearance. Early on, she's on the bottom of that Kasaya tribe, and she's one of the main people creating the chaos amidst that group. She's going to Courtney, she's going to Shane, and leaking information to both sides to make sure that they remain in that state of chaos and they're voting out each other in the pre-merge. She also has a really impressive move knocking out Bob Dog in like a 3-2-2 vote.
Yeah.
Which no one even talks about when it comes to Suri's legacy, but it's an insane move that she's able to make happen at all. And then you get to the post-merge where Suri completely flips her approach. Now she's in the majority. Now she doesn't want that group to turn on each other. And I think she's a major reason why Kasaya stays loyal all the way until the final 7, where they're forced to lose one of their own because Bruce shits himself.
Doesn't
Shit himself.
Yeah.
And then you get to the late stretch of the season, and I think Suri's strong positioning is highlighted over and over again. She's the person that everybody trusts in the game. That enables her to pull off that 3-2-1 vote against Courtney. That enables her to play the middle when Shane goes home at the final 5. And it's reflected in the final tribal council where Aris and Danielle are both asked who is most responsible for your success in the game, and they both say Suri.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Like, that is a huge moment for her. Just continuing to validate. I love that moment and was going to bring it up. So I'm glad you did.
This season had some gimmicks. That immunity idol that I criticized Yule for in Cook Islands applies here with Terry. I think that item is completely overpowered. And if not for that crazy idol, I think there's a really good chance that Suri wins this season. If Terry doesn't have that thing at Final 4, he's voted out. You get to a Final 3 with Suri, Aris, and Danielle, where both Danielle and Aris are trying to bring Suri to the end. I think she's screwed over by production interference more than anyone on this cast, even Dan Fuego, who was also screwed over in the pre-merge. So that's my Suri spiel for you. A robbed goddess.
A robbed goddess. I mean, high praise, but she's deserving. I mean, she's one of the best players we've watched so far. I'll say this. I understand more why Suri is a household name in Survivor fandom than why Parvati is.
That's fair. Yeah.
Like I get Parvati is going to continue to cement her legacy over other seasons as we watch. Suri from her first one, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I think
I would watch more forever.
I think if you're judging Cook Islands Parvati and Panama Suri, two people who both did not win their respective seasons, I think Suri's the better player. If
Head
you're
and shoulders.
comparing Cook Islands Yule and Panama Suri, that I think is an interesting argument. I could go either way on who's the better player there. I might lean towards Yule, but it's close.
All right. Terry's feeling good. Terry and Danielle are solid. Terry shows off the idol basically just to taunt Aris. We get a Danielle narrated montage. Apologies for the language. We get a montage of Aris and Terry's dick slapping contest over their time on the island. They are just constantly butting heads and competing for everything. Who can catch the most fish? Who can make the biggest fire? Who can carry the most water? Ridiculous. Danielle, at this point, before the reward, says in confessional that Aris will need to win or he's going home. So at this point, Danielle is committed. Things change. We go to reward. The reward itself, an advantage, essentially, for the immunity challenge. A meal designed to rejuvenate, replenish, to fire you up, right? Chicken breasts, fruit and veg, protein shake, electrolytes, and then a sleeping kit. You get a pillow, a blanket, and a cot for the night. So the winner of the reward gets all of that for the night before the challenge. The challenge itself, pretty straightforward. Go through a maze thing, unlock a combination lock wheelie thing, use these pegs to climb a wall, put the pegs in these holes. Okay? It's neck and neck. This is the best challenge, I think, of the episode, of both episodes we're covering. Just in terms of competition and closeness, it literally comes down to the final step where they have to put the pegs in the proper holes to drop their flags. Between Aris and Terry, Danielle is just also there. Terry wins out. They actually have a nice sportsmanlike moment. And then we see Terry eating alone for about 4.5 seconds. I think it's literally one shot of him enjoying his reward. That's it.
I don't even remember that shot. I wrote down that we didn't see Terry enjoying the reward, so I guess I looked away.
It is one shot. Like, it's not, they didn't bother sending 2 cameramen. It's one shot. And then he comes back.
I think it's actually a disadvantage for the final immunity.
Clyde, I was just about to ask if you thought that, because Aris talks about how this is a psychological advantage for him and disadvantage for Terry because now he has to win, right? So why do you think it's a disadvantage?
It's a disadvantage because the final immunity challenge is a weight-based challenge. You don't want to be filled with chicken and vegetables going into that thing. And this is my tinfoil hat moment of the episode. You had yours with Suri and the breakup of the 2-part finale. I think that this season was meant to end with this reward challenge. This challenge has a epic proportion to it, with the contestants racing up that wall to put up the flags at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could have been a season where maybe with the Bruce medevac at the final 7, they had to shift the order of the challenges a little bit, and that caused this challenge to be the final 3 reward instead of the final 3 immunity. I don't think that's confirmed. There's situations like that in Survivor history where they have to change the challenges based on medevacs. I don't think that's reported for this season, but it just feels really weird to have a food-based reward given the final immunity.
A food-based reward and a lackluster endurance, just standing for the final immunity. The combination of weird reward, high spectacle, and womp womp mediocre immunity challenge. I think you're right. I think you're onto something.
I think when I saw this reward challenge for the first time, I immediately thought, okay, if this is reward, that means final immunity is a physical challenge. Contestants are going to be climbing over obstacles. Maybe it's like a weight-bearing challenge of some kind, one where you're putting those calories to use. But in reality, that meal is only working against you. So yeah, I think it's one of the strangest parts of this finale.
Then we have the montage thing. I skipped it. Is there anything you have to note?
The rites of passage?
I skipped the entire thing.
You always disrespect the rites of
Yes, I do.
passage.
I do.
I watched that entire thing. I don't know
Good.
how you watch Paramount Plus on 1.5 speed, by the way. I
I
tried
have
doing
a
that for the rites of passage.
so I have a Chrome plugin that Chrome has since, I think, pulled from their web store because it violates their terms of service.
Okay.
But it's still installed on my computer, and it lets you customize. You can go anywhere from like 0.3, so you can slow things down, or up to 3x.
Oh,
So it's a
okay.
slider. I can control it.
Yeah. So I guess I'll need to go to the dark web to speed
Yeah.
up my Paramount Plus a little bit.
If
So
it
I
gets
watched this
deleted-
thing at 1 time speed.
Clyde, listen. If I have to watch 49 at 1x speed, oh my God, it's over, man. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Will you
Like,
watch 50 on 1x speed? What does it take for you to get down to that
45-minute
1x?
episodes.
Well, I guess earlier this season we had 45-minute episodes, and
most
you've been
of this
watching on
season-
1.25.
Most of this season, I've been watching a little bit sped up because I'm so used to it now. Like, Jeff sounds like he's talking in slow motion at normal speed to me. I don't have the free time, and especially when in these older episodes, right? There will be times where people take so long to say a sentence because they're thinking it out in confessional or whatever, that even on 2x speed, it feels natural. It's just a slow pace that you need to speed up. Anyway.
But I watched the rites of passage all the way through for the audience, so I'm
Yeah.
here as the true
expert.
Yeah, giving them the boots on the ground reporting from Survivor Panama. But I only have 2 notes from the rites of passage.
Hit
They
me.
come from 2 of my favorite characters of the season. One from Dan Fuego.
Oh, yeah?
When they get to Dan's torch, Terry says, quote, "The man had it all. He definitely had the right stuff." And I completely agree, Terry. I wish we had Dan come back on a future season. He does not return. So we got some Dan content in the finale, which was essential. We also have in the Shane reflection in the rites of passage, there's a slow motion shot of him ripping a cigarette at the Panamanian fishing village. One thing I noticed in the rites of passage at large is that they don't bring in new footage. They just replay clips that they already showed earlier in the season.
Oh, yeah.
So it felt a little lazy, but I can get past it. I'm ready for final immunity.
All right. So the final immunity challenge, floating platform balancing. Each contestant is standing on increasingly small platforms. These are not scaled. These are not adjusted to weight. They are just identical platforms. When you have an endurance challenge that doesn't have a scaling factor, right? Something like, I always think of D on 45 or 46.
45.
45.
Yeah, you got it.
When she's holding onto the pole, right? She dominates that challenge. That's an endurance challenge that is not scaled. Everybody's holding on to the same kind of pole, and the scale is yourself. This is similar, but there's an atmospheric component. You are balancing in waves that the other people are creating, right? In waves that are coming in off the ocean. It's pretty brutal. Increasingly small platforms every 15 minutes, with a minute in between to crawl from one to the next and get settled. No sitting, no balancing with your hands. You can only stand on your feet. Everybody makes it through the first 2 platforms. On the transition to the 3rd platform, things fall apart. Aris fully falls into the water. Terry fully falls into the water. Barely makes it up before the time starts and lasts about 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Aris lasts almost no time longer, and Danielle wins immunity. This is ending with a whimper, right? This is a mediocre end. This entire post-merge, every challenge has been set up as Aris versus Terry. That's the whole narrative. Physical beasts bashing into one another, right? In the stupid one we barely covered with accounting and the ropes, they literally slam their heads together, and Jeff goes, "Whoa, a couple of battering rams."
Yep.
Which is a weird thing to say, and not how battering rams worked. But to have Danielle win this, I don't want to take away from Danielle's win at all, because she wins. She wins the most important immunity challenge of the season, and that's huge. We've had nothing narratively to set up for that. Nothing at all. And I think that goes back to your theory and really validates it. This was not meant to be the final challenge.
I had a different perspective from you. Like, yes, the challenge itself is kind of lame. Probably the worst final immunity challenge that we've ever covered on the podcast. But I think the outcome is way more entertaining for the finale at large.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Because, like you mentioned, this entire season has been Aris versus Terry from a physical perspective. But Survivor as a game is not just a physical competition. If you wanted a physical competition, go watch the Olympics. Survivor at its core is a social game. And I love that at the 11th hour, it goes from who can win this challenge to who is the better holistic Survivor player, who can convince Danielle to take them to the end. And I think that's a real testament of a strong Survivor contestant. So I think Danielle winning this, while it was out of nowhere, was a way more entertaining outcome for the finale.
That's true. So now the question, who is better for Danielle to take with her to the end? We get Aris pitching himself, and he doesn't do a good job. He downplays his threat level and kind of threatens a little bit. Like,
what? You didn't like that?
I mean, he downplays his threat level, but he's like, man, you should really take me. He was very insistent. Terry, on the other hand, says, I've only won challenges. Like, I have nothing strategic. You should take me. But I'm not going to pressure you. He backs off a little bit, which I really respect. I think in a moment like this, making your case and then giving the person all the space they need, that's what you should do. So I like what Terry does here. I don't like what Aris does here, but it doesn't really matter because it's up to Danielle. Clyde, if you are Danielle, who do you take?
Well, I think Danielle makes the right call here. You have to vote out Terry. There's
Really?
people on the jury who are absolutely locked for Terry as a jury vote. Austin is there from Lamina. Sally is there. Who does Aris have by comparison? Only Sari. You don't want to knock out Aris as well because this is an old school season, and you don't want to come across as the backstabber of Kasaya, the one that voted out all of your fellow tribe mates, because I don't think that's something that this particular cast would respect. They seem to be a more socially oriented jury than strategically oriented jury. So I think Danielle makes the right call in voting out Terry. And in the reunion of this season, Jeff asked the cast who would they have voted for if she took out Aris instead there. And I think it ends up being a 5-2 vote either way. She gets the votes of Sari and Bruce if she's up against Terry. So she was in a lose-lose spot.
That's tough.
When it comes to the arguments presented by Aris and Terry themselves, I like that they're on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. It's kind of a good cop, bad cop situation. Terry is the understanding paternal figure saying, hey, if I won final immunity, I was going to hold up my end of the bargain. I was going to take you to the end. He's really kind about the entire situation. Aris goes in guns blazing. He says, hey, if you vote me out, you're going to lose my jury vote. I'm going to go to Ponderosa and make sure that Sari doesn't vote for you as well. Yes, it's a more aggressive play style, but I think in Survivor, it's all about catering your particular strategy to the people that you're working with. And I think Aris knew that Danielle is someone that would cave a bit more to that pressure than somebody like Terry. I bet if Aris made that same pitch to Terry, if Terry won final immunity, it doesn't work out for him. So I actually like this move from Aris. I think that's one of his better strategic plays of the entire season. We didn't even mention that Aris threw the final immunity challenge to Danielle. Not officially. They had that moment where they look at each other on the water and he nods to her before falling off. Like, he was probably falling in the water either way. But that was another thing that he could use against her and say, I gave up this challenge for you and you're going to do me dirty like this.
And on that note, he's the worst yoga teacher I've ever seen. Like he's the least zen. I mean, yoga teachers are usually insane. I know a lot of them here in DC. They're all like caffeine addicted, workout addicted. Like, they're all in great shape, and then everything else about them, they're a little bit manic, and they need the yoga to like blow off steam.
Okay.
But you know what they all have? A good sense of balance. Aris doesn't. Like, I don't think he's a very good yoga teacher. Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot going for him. I can respect Danielle's call here.
Well, last thing I'll say with Danielle is that even though she said in confessional that she was aligned with Terry at one point, I don't think she ever took the Terry option that seriously, where there's that conversation between the two of them where they're going to the well. And it feels like even in that moment, Danielle is trying to set up Terry for his elimination so it doesn't hurt as much. She's saying, oh, if you use the idol on me at Final Four, this would have been no question. She's trying to explain her vote before she actually does it.
And she says something very nice, like, would you bring someone to Final Tribal who you knew could beat you? Right? She basically says, look, if I take you, I'm losing, which is a very nice thing to say. And it turns out was probably true.
You get the tribal council. Terry's voted out. It's a 1-0. He doesn't do a great job leading up to his elimination. He publicly reveals that he had the immunity idol, and he's essentially hyping up his game before he's even made it to the final tribal. So more poor social play from Terry, even at the very end. He's taken out here. I am not the biggest Terry Dietz fan, but I will say that his run on Panama is one of the best challenge games that we've ever seen. It's kind of crazy that we've covered Aussie and Cook Islands and Terry in Panama over the last 2 years. I have some stats from Terry here. He goes 5 out of 7 in individual immunities. He goes 3 out of 5 in individual rewards. So he wins like the majority, 2/3 of all the individual challenges in the post-merge. You can compare that to Ozzy, who wins, I think it's 6 out of 8 individual immunities on his season. So those two are neck and neck for best challenge performance of all time. You were correct in that the record for most individual immunities is 5.
You were so coy for 2 weeks. I knew it was 5. I knew he couldn't win today.
Well, how did you feel about Terry going?
I was really high on Terry for a while. He was terrible strategically, but he was a great physical player, and that was fun to watch. As soon as he was so disrespectful to Suri at the start of this episode, I was out. I was like, I'm pretty sure you're not winning another challenge. Pretty sure 5's the cap. If I see somebody talk to somebody that way, I'm not going to root for them anymore. I'm done. Like I said at the top of the episode, losing Terry and Suri meant losing all of my real emotional connection to this cast. Would I have been happy with a Terry win? I don't think so. Like, I don't know how thrilled I am with an Aris win. I'm not. I don't think I would have been happy unless Suri won, to be honest. She's so great. Like, yeah.
That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you. How would you feel if Terry won this season? Because if he wins Final Immunity, he wins the whole thing. I can tell you from my perspective, if Terry won that last challenge, goes to the final tribal, earns just about all the jury votes, he potentially loses a jury vote or two from like Suri or Bruce or someone. If that happens, and Terry's the winner of Survivor Panama, I would call it one of the worst winning games in the history of the franchise. I just think Terry had no clue what was going on for most of this game. If you look at his entire record on Panama, he votes correctly in just 4 out of 9 tribal councils this season. He doesn't have any agency. In the pre-merge, I think he's playing mainly to the strategic benefits of Austin. And then in the post-merge, he has opportunities to flip the game in his favor, and he doesn't take it because he wants to hold on to that idol. Some people might look at Terry and say, oh, he's a victim of the era of Survivor where he competed. He was a victim of playing in a time where tribes were more loyal to their respective groups, and he was just unlucky in that he went into the post-merge down in numbers. And there is some truth to that, but at the same time, like, Terry had the most powerful idol in the history of the show. He didn't need to be in that spot where he was down in numbers. He could have done something to actually give him some agency, and he never took that opportunity. So the fact that Terry even made it to 3rd place on this season, I think, is pretty lucky. And it was only a matter of time until he was presented with the challenge that did not play to his strengths. It just so happened that that challenge came at the final 3, but this thing could have happened at, the final 6, the final 5, and then Terry's gone way earlier.
Yeah. You take away his challenge threat, and as soon as he sits at a tribal council where he is not safe, he goes home. That's it.
Yeah. And that's a major reason why I said earlier that I would not put Terry as the top 3 player on this season, because I just don't think that's a very repeatable approach to the game. You can't completely mismanage your threat level and bank on winning almost every individual immunity. You're eventually going to face one that doesn't play to your strong suit. So RIP Terry. He does come back I mentioned last week in Survivor Second
Once?
Chance. Yeah, he competes one more time. He was voted in by the fans, and we'll see whenever we watch that season. That'll be
Yeah.
a ways down the line.
We have the final two, Aris and Danielle. They get their Survivor brunch, and Aris, oh, I wrote this down. They get a mimosa kit that is right next to milk. I wrote down they should put the champagne in the milk. I don't know why I thought that's where they were going with it, but they kind of presented it in that fashion. They start walking around with their mimosas, and Aris totally buffs it, slips and falls, cuts his back and his hand. Bad. I mean, it's a bad fall. Once again, old school Survivor shows far more graphic injury and medical stuff than you would ever see now. It's intense. He feels faint. He's bleeding a lot. Medical comes in. They give him quite a few stitches on his hand. Only one on his back, which doesn't seem like enough. And we get a very, very long emotional, I wrote down, long emotional montage for these two. Skip. And I skipped their whole wow, we did it. Good job.
So I have a question for you on Aris and slipping on the rocks.
Hit me.
Let's say Aris slips. Gash in his back is horrible. He needs to be seen by a medical professional in a hospital setting. They got to pull him from the game.
Yeah.
Does Danielle just win by default? Do they wait till Aris is drugged up, then roll him into Final Tribal on one of the hospital beds so he can give his final speech? Do they bring Terry back into the game and give Terry a chance at the final two to make his case? Production has never answered this one way or the other, but what would you say is the fair way to handle a medical evacuation at the final two?
You do the vote live in the studio.
Oh,
You do Final Tribal live in the studio.
So you give the contestants months ahead of time to prepare their arguments. And they'll also watch the show. They'll have a better sense of who had more control during the game. That's the only thing I had leading up to Final Tribal. Now we can jump into the nitty gritty of it all.
Let me try to recount their opening arguments as I saw them and tell me what gaps you see, okay? Aris's argument is that he contributed a lot to camp life. He worked his ass off in the challenges where he won one challenge. He brings up his challenge effort a lot. He's like, hey, man, I tried. And he tried to connect with people. That's his main pillars of his argument. Camp life, challenge effort, connection. Danielle's just happy to be here. She doesn't make an argument for herself. She's basically just like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. This is amazing. I did my best. She doesn't really talk up strategic, relational. I needed her to give a good opening statement and set a narrative tone for herself, and I did not feel like she did. Did you get anything from her?
The main theme that I noticed from Danielle's arguments that differ from Aris's was that Danielle was more willing to own up to her deceptive play style. I feel that Aris kept hitting that drum of loyalty throughout the final tribal council, and Danielle was willing to say, hey, I'm down to flip on people when it was an opportunity for me to advance myself in the game. And typically in Survivor history, if you're the one that owns up to playing sneakily, that does wonders for you in the final tribal. It shows an element of self-awareness. But on this season, the jury did not appreciate that approach from Danielle.
No.
We can talk about some of the specific questions from jury members. We don't need to go through every one.
Yes.
I mentioned Sally earlier, where she asked who was most responsible for their success in the game. They both say Suri, so major shout out to Suri there. Terry stands up at the front.
Jeez. I actually liked Terry's question, and I did not like the responses. That's my take.
I didn't even write down Terry's question. I just wrote down that he took shots at Danielle. Danielle claimed that she was deceiving in the game when it was necessary. He said that any form of deception is off base. And Terry believes that he did not deceive anyone over the last 38 days, which is just not true. Terry lied to a bunch of people. So once again, Terry has that heightened perspective of himself. So
his question was, hey, I want you each to rate yourself out of 1 to 10 and tell me why. And they both give themselves a 9 and say, we tried really hard. Like, this is an opportunity to say, hey, I'm gonna give myself a 6 because I tried really hard, but like I had to stab Courtney in the back. Right? There's a chance for humility, for resolution, for recovery there that they don't take. Courtney, by the way, now I get it. Like that's all I'm gonna say here. I now understand why people were so ready to get rid of her. It's the most annoying. I forgot my guns. They've been dropped in the sea of forgiveness.
Chips on your shoulder weigh you down, and I'm a bird. I gotta fly. I didn't even write down her question. I was so caught off guard by all the fluff around her question. But I feel like Courtney's final tribal speech is one of my favorites that we've covered because I think it encapsulates her character so well. And throughout her entire spiel, it's so obvious that she blames Danielle for her own elimination, even though Aris was in on that plan. And Aris has to call her out on it. He says, yeah, Courtney, I voted against you, but let's not forget, you voted against me in that tribal council. Only other jury member that I wanted to hit on was Shane. Were there any other people that you wanted to talk about before him?
I wanted to shout out Suri, and I'm just going to do this as a little piece of positivity before we get into Shane's garbage, okay? So this is a book called Moonbound by Robin Sloan. It's probably going to be my best book of the year. It's a fantastic novel. In this book, it's a futuristic novel in a world where animals have achieved sentience, yada, yada. But there's a section where beavers who are sentient are having a debate, okay? And I just want to read this. The beavers are essentially, red versus black have given their arguments. This was the beaver who supported the fire, so Ariel expected to hear a summary of that argument. Instead, the opposite. Red described the danger and uncertainty inherent in the project. Has this beaver's opinion been changed so easily? He whispered. No. Red states black's opinion. Black will do the same for red, and they must both agree that the summary is fair. This is the assurance of an argument in good faith. I love that, because this is what Suri makes them do. She makes them argue for each other in a way that doesn't feel performative. It doesn't feel like she's like, hey, let's all get along. She makes them genuinely make the argument for one another, and I love it. 10 out of 10, great stuff from Suri. Now,
it's a really difficult question from Aris and Danielle's perspective. Because if I was in their shoes, I don't know if I would want to give a full argument on why my opponent should win.
No.
And I think Aris does a good job at running the line. Like, he credits Danielle and says, when I was at my low point and I slipped on those rocks and I had gashes in my hand and back, she was the one supporting me along the way. So he highlights Danielle the person, not Danielle the Survivor player. And I think that's the best approach for that question.
All right, let's do Shane. Now that we've had our nice little uplifting, I hate this.
What? Like, I love this. I feel like Shane's final tribal speech here is evidence as to why modern Survivor needs this format back in the show. It gives every person on the jury a moment in the spotlight to explain their outlook on the game. And Shane makes it very clear. He says, quote, I wish that Terry would have been there. I believe that Terry is the most deserving of the 16 for the $1 million. He doesn't want Aris or Danielle to win. He says that Danielle was useless around camp and Aris broke their agreement to ride to the final tribal council together. He calls out Aris and says that we cannot judge people based on intention. We need to judge people based on their actions, which is wild coming from Shane out of all people. So he has this whole speech on how much he hates the two finalists, and it ultimately culminates with this question. $1 million question. Pick a number, Jack, between 1 and 1 million, and that will decide my jury vote. If you're Aris or Danielle, what number do you pick here? Because there is a correct answer.
1 and 1 million. So Aris picks 4 and Danielle picks 10. I think the key, Aris's pick here is terrible. 4 is so bad.
So bad.
Danielle picking 10 is great, but if I'm going first, right? I think I'm picking 100.
No, you pick 500,000. You pick the number right in the middle. force your
No.
opponent to commit to one side or the other, and then whoever's closer wins it. If you
Here's
pick
the thing.
4, you're giving Danielle every other number to win this jury vote.
But here's the thing. I think there's a number. It's not a midpoint, right? It's not 50-50 because it's not going to be random. You have to weigh it a little bit because you have to consider the fact that Shane's not picking 300,265, right? Like, it's not going to be a random number. It's probably going to be a number that has some significance or meaning to him. It's probably Boston's weight, 135, because he's a high schooler, right? He's not the child we all thought he was. It's going to be a number with significance, which means it's probably going to be a smaller number. It's probably 1 to 100. What is the number, by the way?
I think he writes it on his voting parchment.
He
I
does.
need to go back and check.
And I couldn't tell what it was. Let me just look it up. So my point here is you want to force your opponent to make that choice, like you said, but you don't want them to pick high or low. You want them to pick like honestly, maybe 10 is the perfect answer because you are forcing either single or double, because people, pick a number. People pick 7 a lot and people pick 35 a lot. There are certain numbers that stick out in people's minds.
I agree that sane people have certain numbers that stick out, but we're not dealing with a sane person here. We're dealing with Shane. I don't think Shane is going to pick a typical number. I bet he picked an insane one that he wrote on that final parchment. Were you able to find it?
Shane said in a later Reddit AMA, he did not reveal the number on screen. He did it so the finalists would not know.
Oh, so I guess we still don't know, even today then.
I'm reading a summary of his AMA. There's some wild stuff in here.
Anything new that we didn't cover last week? I felt like we did a lot of the crazy Shane stories last episode when he went home.
He's an ass guy.
Okay, yeah, we're learning too much about Shane. Shane's gone.
Oh my God. Okay, there's some stuff in there that is not suitable for the podcast, even on top of what I just said. Moving on. So Shane does this whole rigmarole, and here's my take. This is yet another layer of ending with a whimper, right? Shane goes last. This is the culmination, right? Production said, "Oh, you know who's going to bring the fireworks? Shane. He'll have a really good question." And he goes, "Pick a number." Like, come on. We have this mediocre immunity challenge to end it all. We have this crummy end to the final tribal council where we had some decent questions, right? There's some good stuff. And it ends with Shane. Here's my summary of the closing arguments. Danielle says, "Hey, I tried really hard and I could use the money." Aris says, "Shane, I'm sorry. I worked hard around camp and at challenges and connecting to you people." Aris does it right. Okay, I don't love Aris's argument, right? It's not that strong. I hate it when camp life plays a factor in a final tribal, right? That's a
really?
crummy, like, that's not strategic. I mean, I guess it's a social element, but like, hey, I did more chores is kind of a bummer. But here's what he does right, to go to the analytics of this and to look at a winning strategy. He opens by making his 3 points. He sticks to them throughout, more or less, and he closes with the 3 points. He reinforces the narrative over and over in the ears of the jury. Danielle doesn't have anything you could pick out, right? Like, if you summarize Danielle's, it is hard to distill it to a single line. If you had two people with identical chances of winning, identical resumes in the game, that's going to make the difference every time. And I think, did Danielle have a great shot? No. This sealed the deal. I mean, I knew before we even got close to the vote, but
did you think it was going to be a close vote?
I figured it ends up being what, 5-2?
Yeah.
Yeah. I figured 5-2, 6-1, something like that. Like, I didn't think she was going to be a no vote. I'm sure there was somebody. I think Shane threw that off a little bit, but you have to have a clear argument and you have to stick to it and build it like a narrative there. That's the key to these final tribals.
One thing I didn't even ask you is that this is the first final 2 final tribal council that we've ever covered on the pod. How do you
Yeah.
feel about the final two format versus a
I don't
final
like it.
three?
I don't
You
like
like the
it.
final three more?
I mean, I know the final three, we see a lot of no vote finalists, and that kind of sucks. But I like having three because you get more arguments, you get more dynamics at play, right? Two people is a line, three people is a shape. There's just more going on, geometrically speaking.
And I think a season like Panama proves that not all zero vote finalists are truly zero vote finalists, because I think had this season ended with the final three, Danielle gets 0 votes, but if you make it a final two, there's a couple people that like her enough to
Yeah.
vote for her to get the $1 million. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the case in these new era seasons too, where for 48, well, there were no 0 vote finalists on 48, but for 47, Sue got 0 votes. But maybe if it's a final two, there's someone on the jury that wants to throw a vote her way. You mentioned this. It's a 5-2 vote, crowning Aris the winner of Survivor Panama. He gets the jury votes of Terry, Courtney, Austin, Sally, and Suri. Danielle gets votes from Shane and Bruce. So this very well could have been a 6-1 if Aris doesn't pick 4 as his number to Shane's $1 million question. So Aris is your winner. How do you feel about Aris, the champion of Survivor Panama?
I feel fine. This was a good season. This was a fun season. I know I have to put this in my rankings, so I'm going to pull up that list really quick to put these. Well, so let me do it, right? I've got to place him as a winner. For reference, my winners in the seasons we've covered: Todd, in order from first to last. Todd, D, Yule, Kyle, Jam Jam, Rachel. Oh, I forgot about Rachel. I'm surprised. Kenzie, Natalie. I'm putting Aris at number 8. I'm putting Natalie down to 9. I'm putting Aris below Kenzie. That's where I'm putting him. Number 8 out of 9. I'm low on him as a winner. All he did was outlast. I don't think he outwit. I don't think he outplayed. He did enough to win, right? But it wasn't a game I'm really excited about.
See, I'm a little bit higher on Aris than you are. In our podcast rankings, out of the 9 that we've covered, I had him 6th, 1 ahead of Kenzie and 1 below Jam Jam. In my all-time Survivor winner rankings, I have him at 26, so slightly below average for me.
Yeah.
In those rankings, I divide the winners up into different tiers. I have him in my second in command tier. I see him as a secondary strategic force to Suri, who is really running the game. And I can just run through some of the pros and cons when it comes to Aris, the Survivor winner. Do you want to hear the positives or the negatives first?
Let's open with the positives.
Yeah. So on the positive side, I think he's in the core of that majority alliance on the Kasaya tribe that runs the early game. And then once you get to the post-merge, I think that Aris plays a large role in keeping that Kasaya group together, especially when it comes to his relationship with Shane. There are multiple points in the post-merge where Shane is going crazy, he's got his nicotine withdrawal going on, and he considers either flipping against that group or quitting the game entirely. You might remember in like episode 2 of the season, Shane wants to quit, and Aris is the one that convinces him to stick around. And then later in the game, when Suri goes on that spa reward and isolates Shane, Aris is the one that reconnects with him and convinces him to stay loyal. So I think Aris plays a larger role than Danielle in keeping Kasaya together. And then once you get later in the post-merge, that's where Suri starts to take control. She pulls off the Courtney blindside, she pulls off the Shane votes. But I think you need to credit Aris for positioning himself right alongside Suri. The fact that Suri considered Aris her number 1 needs to count for something. So I think he was a secondary figure that kind of ran the second half of the game, but he wasn't the top person calling the shots. So there are the positives for him. On the negative side, he does have a couple rough rounds. In the pre-merge, he's out of the loop on the Bob Dog vote, which was not great for him. And then in the early merge and really throughout the entire post-merge, he's a constant target. Terry votes against him on multiple occasions. He's the top target of that Lamina alliance until they're ultimately decimated. And when you look at every winner in the history of the show, Aris is second all-time for the most votes cast against him. So I don't think he does a great job at managing his threat level. So balancing his dependence on Suri, but also his agency in the game. I think he's your classic middle tier winner. I'll put him at 6 out of 9 on our rankings. A follow-up question to that is, if you were on the jury, would you have voted for Danielle over Aris since you're lower on him?
No, I'm low on him, but I would have been lower on Danielle. Like, I'm low on either of them, right? I think Aris, I'm not high on him as a winner, but he's clearly got a better argument than Danielle. His resume's better. He made more moves. He made more connections. I mean, the whole, oh, I tried at challenges. I don't care about that, right? Effort doesn't win championships. I mean, it does, but it's not the big thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would have voted for Aris because I think he locks down the narrative. He gives a better speech. He gives better answers. In the end, I think that's what matters.
That's fair. I just released a series like a month or two ago going through every final tribal and explaining who I would vote for if I sat on the jury. In that series, I said that I would vote for Aris. I stand by that opinion, but it's close. I do think there's a legitimate argument here in favor of Danielle. I think she plays the more flexible strategic game between the two of them. She's able to build a relationship with someone like Terry, who saves her at the final 4, and she's in that position of power at the final 3. One thing that wasn't even brought up in the final tribal of this season is that Terry was the top challenge dog. He was the person that Aris was kept around to beat. There were many members of Kasaya that wanted to knock out Aris, but they kept him in the game because they thought that he could beat Terry in a challenge. But at the end of the day, when you get to the final 3, who's the one that actually defeats Terry? Who's the one that's responsible for the Terry elimination? It's Danielle. So if we're going to say Terry is the dragon of the season, she was the one that took down the dragon. I think that needs to be considered in those jury votes. But I'd still vote for Aris. I think he has the slightly better resume. On a random season, I think there's an argument to say that Danielle would do better across multiple appearances. I would still lean Aris, but it's close. We got our winner rankings up. Now we can do season rankings. Where are you putting Panama all time?
4.
Okay. So behind what and ahead of what?
So, right. 4 means nothing unless you can see the list I'm looking at.
Yeah, you'll need to say the
my
full
ranking.
list. What's at number 3 and what's at number 5? What's around it?
I'll give you the breakdown. I have everything we have watched from old Survivor above everything we've watched from new Survivor. Like, looking at my list, it is China, Cook Islands, Samoa, and then all of the others. I'm putting Panama in between Samoa and 48.
So the worst of the old school seasons.
The worst of the old school seasons. The other 3 have just been so good, right? Suri alone. Does Suri beat Samoa? No. Suri didn't burn somebody's socks, Clyde. She didn't break somebody's soul. Like, I didn't watch Aris's mentality break down in 1,000 pieces like I watched Jason. I'll never forget that. I'll never stop bringing that up.
I know.
So 4.
For me?
How about you?
Number 1, baby.
Whoa.
Top of the list. The best we've seen on the pod. This is a great season. Like,
it's not
maybe
top.
For me, it's because we're coming off of all these new era seasons, and I'm so used to seeing similar casts in the same location where it's a very kumbaya vibe. I think Panama is such a deviation from that. It's a symbol of old school Survivor. People are toxic.
Messy.
Yeah. The challenges are rough. The votes are nonsensical at points. You have a little bit of a pagonging in the early merge. And I think it's a really great time. And for me, what makes this season is the characters. And that's surprising. Like, I'm the true expert. I'm the one that enjoys the strategic side of the game. There's so many memorable moments on this season.
Let me, before you do the walk through memory lane, one of the reasons I have it lower is actually, while I love all of the story moments, the pagonging drops it lower for me. The strategic doldrum we see at the beginning of the merge, that's, I think, what puts it lower for me as a season as a whole. But please walk me through memory lane.
So, memory lane, some of the best character moments that we've ever covered on the pod all happened in this season. You have Bruce and Bob Dog drinking the wine in the Casa de Charmin. You have Shane smoking cigarettes at the Panamanian fishing village.
That's like an Action Bronson lyric. Oh, that's so funny.
You got Shane on his thinking stump with his fake BlackBerry phone. That was absurd.
Yep.
Then you get to the post-merge where Bruce is pulled from the game and Shane is naked, taking him to the boat, and Courtney is singing to him when he does not want to be sang to.
God, I forgot about that. That's such a good moment. Yeah.
There's so many funny moments on this season. I think this is like the most comedic season of Survivor that we've covered so far. Panama is in a tier of its own. I'm putting it number 1. It's still outside my top 10 all-time seasons, but it moved up considerably with this rewatch.
So all-time, where is it? Out of 49, or out of 48, I guess I should say.
Let me see. I can check right now for you. So for perspective, number 2 in the podcast rankings for me is China, which is number 14 all-time. China, side note, if you're going to criticize this season for pagonging, China also has a pagonging to a certain degree. Todd and Amanda's Fei Long Alliance runs a good section of that game.
Yeah, but I like those people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective.
It's fine if I like them. Listen, like, it's not a problem that way.
So I have China at 14 all time, Panama season 12 falling in at number 12 on my rankings. I think it's the best that we've ever seen, and I'm excited to cover some seasons down the line that hopefully surpass Panama. We'll need to wait and see.
Well, that does it for number 9 in the books, in the can. Thank you for sticking around with us, taking the time to listen to this old season. I feel like these are for the diehards, right?
Oh,
and so we're really grateful that you've made it this far. Thanks very much. Go touch some grass. Go look at the sun. Not directly, but adjacent to the sun. And here in a couple weeks, we'll have our draft for 49. So anything else to plug, to push, to say, Clyde?
Yeah, a lot more content on the way. So this episode goes up on a Sunday. The following Sunday, I'll be releasing my player ranking for Survivor Panama, ranking everyone based on their strategic dominance on this particular season. We'll then have the fantasy draft, where Abby will be giving us the draft order. I just saw this the other day, but in our 48 draft, Abby took Kyle with the first overall pick, which is really impressive. I think it's the first time someone's sniped the winner out of the gate. So props to Abby.
That's dominant right there. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll get to pick the order of that draft. We'll have that going. And then we'll be covering season 49 week by week like we do every season, building up to what we've all been waiting for, Survivor 50, starting in the spring. It's going to be a fun time. So a lot of content on the way here, and the cycle just keeps going, Jack.
It never ends.
It never ends, man. Yep.
But I love it. Hey, we've done 9 seasons, bro. Like, that's pretty incredible. Like, we're almost to 10. At 10, this is a real achievement. Like,
yeah, it's not a phase anymore once we hit 10.
We got to 5. When we get to 10, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So we're almost there. Thank you for listening. This has been Survivor Analytics, season 49. Wait, no. Crap. Survivor
Panama.
Survivor Panama.